Multi-billionaire Richard Branson wants to risk life and limb to break another world record. He wants to take the coveted transatlantic sailing record, even though he's been lucky to survive some of his record attempts.
I've been pulled out at sea, I think, about 5 times by helicopters. I'm up to about my 12th life.
Which was tough on his 2 children.
I do remember crying and dancing. Doesn't sound like a good dad, do that?
So this time, he's bringing them with him.
God, that looks really scary.
Bloody hell.
This will be no luxury cruise, no safety boat following.
Can I lie down a lot easier?
Have you been sick?
No, the food's too good.
It's bad. Especially for the whole mainsail.
So can the family who have everything cope
I'm wet, all inside, everything.
where money can't help?
We just got into weather that is too strong for the boat.
Richard Branson is one of the richest men on the planet. While his 2 children were growing up, he became a great British icon, not just for his Virgin business empire, but also for a series of high-adrenaline world record attempts. Now Holly and Sam are old enough to join him, so the Bransons are letting cameras into their family for the first time
But the longer we're waiting now, it's going to get colder and colder.
to document their attempt on one of the great maritime speed records, sailing the Atlantic in a single-hulled boat. But first, Richard has a special reason to show his kids the film of a very different transatlantic attempt, in a powerboat.
Nice shots.
As Atlantic Challenger set sail, Richard was expecting to arrive in London in time for Sam's birth.
A good omen seemed to be the early news that Richard had become a father for the second time, even though there was no way that he could see the photos being shown in London.
Oh, is that me?
But this was not one of his most successful adventures.
It seemed we hit something.
The Mayday signal was received from Atlantic Challenger. The boat rapidly sinking.
When we heard that the boat had sunk, that was one of his many stupid things, just off the Scilly Isles where we were waiting for him. To my horror, I thought, well, what? Joan's going to hear this. It's going to come out in the paper. We didn't know whether they were all completely lost at sea. So the one thing that I felt, I must quickly ring up Joan, say, don't listen to anybody. I'll keep you informed of what is going on.
Boarding the East Bay provided a particularly poignant moment for Richard. The first sight of his baby son, born at the start of our journey, seen in a passenger's newspaper.
It was quite significant seeing that footage of my dad when he was much younger on this, world record boat trip. Me being born, and then now us, however many years, 23 years on, doing our trip together.
In the years that followed, Richard made a series of increasingly life-threatening record attempts.
The first across the Atlantic in a balloon, first across the Pacific in a balloon. I've had some very foolish records, like most times pulled out of the water by a helicopter.
Did you worry about your dad? Or?
Yeah, I remember him worrying quite a bit. But I do remember the sort of crying and dancing, not really understanding it. Yeah, I remember trying to read your book the first time, and the first page was a letter you wrote to me and Holly. He didn't come back, and then I thought, I'm not reading that. Wait a few more years.
I read it, started crying, thought, never again am I reading that book.
Yeah.
It showed me up seeing you crying as I was climbing into the balloon.
Yeah, I'm sure. Sorry about that. Leaving a message for you in your cockpit. Please come back.
One time I remember you telling me I used to follow you around like 2 days before you go, just not leave your side.
Yeah, doesn't sound like a good dad, do I?
Yeah,
But
it
he's
is.
okay.
But having said that, at least now you understand, and they want you to do it yourself.
Yeah.
10 years ago, he gave up record attempts.
The trip ended shortly after it began, nearly killing Branson and his crew in the process.
But he can't resist any longer. And now his kids are joining him, once more in a boat, across the Atlantic. Only this time there's no engine. The 2 great prizes for sailors are the Around the World and the Transatlantic Speed Record. The first transatlantic record was set in 1905 by a legendary sailor, Captain Charlie Barr. His crossing was so fast, it's only been broken by a single-hulled boat 4 times since.
When I look back on my life, some of the greatest moments of my life were the adventures I got involved with.
At 23, Sam's no stranger to adventure. He's already made trips to the Arctic.
We've been battering our way through the rough sea ice for the last 26 days. This is something that I really would love to be doing as a job.
So he's been developing an adventure website, but without any help from his father's fortune.
I want it to be successful, but still I want to make my own money. I want to support my own family, trying to do that with my own sort of success.
I had the satisfaction of doing my own thing in life and not having to rely on my parents. And he's obviously been quite a privileged kid, being able to go to places like Necker Island and other things. But he would say that getting up in the morning at 5 in the morning every day and trekking for 12, 14 hours a day, that's where he got his satisfaction from. And so, I wanted Holly to get a taste of that.
In New York, the £7 million super yacht built especially to break this record is being unveiled to the press. For Holly, who's always been shielded from the media, it's a first in many ways.
That was my first experience of being in a press conference. I've been asked a lot, but since a young age my mum's always said no on our behalf and then given us, Sam and I, the choice when we got older. So I found that quite daunting.
This is like standing on the roof of a subway train with all the lights out and someone letting a fire hydrant off at you for a week.
What we're looking for is a nice little hurricane to come up behind us and for us to head off before the hurricane reaches.
If this comes too close to something terrible happening, how much trouble would you be in for having put your son and daughter in harm's way?
I'm glad my mom didn't hear that.
Yeah. I think she's late to the press conference, fortunately.
I was actually more nervous about that than I was about sailing across the Atlantic. I've never done anything like that before.
At what age did you realize that speed and breaking records was going to be part of your lives?
I suspect from the age of 4 when my mother dumped me out of a car and told me that I had to make my own way to my grandmother's house, which is about 3 miles away, and I got thoroughly lost. So from quite a young age, my parents were trying to make me stand on my own 2 feet.
So I'm to blame, am I? Well, I suppose I am to blame. I didn't want him to be mamby-pamby like all the other kids seem to be going to parties and I don't know. I just wanted him to be more forceful and resourceful.
Where are you going? Huh? Up there. Dad's idea?
The next generation of Bransons have also embraced that idea, rejecting the easy socialite lifestyle they could have had.
They are remarkably unspoiled, amazing.
Mum and Dad have been very good at only giving Sam and I a very limited amount when we were growing up, just the same as anybody else that we were growing up with.
When they're 5 years old, we have a birthday party for them, and there's lots of birthday presents given. We'll try to make sure they only get 1 or 2, and the rest may be given to the local hospital.
My name is Branson, Sir Richard Branson.
Like Sam, Holly wants her independence from the Branson billions.
I'd never want to scrounge off my parents my whole life. Sam and I both want to make our own way in life.
The career she's chosen will give her an important role on the boat. She's just completed 7 years medical training.
I qualified as a doctor last summer and I worked for 1 year in a hospital, so I'm the only doctor on the boat if something happens.
This is no gin palace. It's a stripped-down, high-tech, no-expense-spared racing machine. This is the Formula One of sailing. At the rear of the boat is the navigation station, where Richard will spend most of his time.
The boat has a built-in computer. It's used to operate all the winches, to operate all the hydraulics, scan the keel. It has alarms throughout the boat, measures the tank locations, pressures, temperatures. And these screens are used to control that system.
It was decided before the trip that I would sit with the navigator, with the skippers, and plan the journey, relay back to the rest of the world what was going on. And if difficult decisions had to be made, be part of them.
The first time I went below deck, we could really see that there was no luxury at all on this boat. There was just a few bunks to sleep in, a tiny kitchen to eat from, and then a few little bits for storage spaces. Everything downstairs had completely been stripped bare to make sure that there was nothing there weight-wise so that they could beat the speed record. Lack of luxury didn't really worry me. I'm not one of those girls that needs bits of luxury.
The boat in which he aims to break sailing's coveted transatlantic speed record, with his 2 children as part of the crew.
I've definitely never done anything like this before.
Holly will be the only doctor on board.
It's going to be wet, windy, nerve-wracking, scary.
But his son Sam has such a taste for adventure that he's squeezing in a quick trip to the Arctic.
It is a bloody long way for me to go to get from here. What can I not? It's a flipping long way for me to go from near the North Pole to get to New York for this transatlantic crossing.
It turns out Sam doesn't have to worry. Although the boat and the crew are ready, there's a problem with the weather. It's not bad enough. A sailing record attempt is totally dependent on finding the right weather and then using it skillfully. The team have been looking for the strong winds in front of a big storm to push the boat across the Atlantic, but no storm has come. Soon, it will be too late in the year to make the attempt.
And you have to avoid the areas of known icebergs, because when you go through that area, it's very, very dense fog, and so you've got to avoid the sort of Titanic scenario.
But there is another possibility, to use the winds behind the storm. The problem is that they will already have whipped up some very large waves.
The danger with sailing on the back edge of a storm is the seas can be quite vicious.
This would be extremely tough on the boat and crew, but if they can keep the boat intact, they could potentially beat the record by over a day. And with time rapidly disappearing, the decision is made to go ahead. Now the team has 24 hours to get to the boat in New York, but not everyone is nervous about the weather.
Kind of feel like I want it to be as brutal as possible. To a limit. Lucky thing with your family owning an airline is last minute tickets are sort of easy to get. If there's space in our class, we'll be able to get a seat, but it's definitely still a big luxury to get in first class.
Last night was a very nerve-wracking evening. Had a phone call from initially from my dad to say, you really have to do this. It's going to be absolutely terrible weather. The conditions are the worst that they've seen, but could break the record.
When I heard how bad the weather conditions were, I called my father to see whether he thought I should take Holly and Sam on the trip.
It's the first time ever I really felt nervousness in Dad's voice. I think he was actually a bit worried about taking us on this trip because the weather was suddenly so bad.
He said that he felt that, that if it was good enough for me, it should be good enough for them.
Other members of the crew of 25 are arriving from around the globe.
Holly?
We got to the hotel and then Mum started filming us.
This is probably her last meal before she's sick. Let's hope not.
She doesn't really like to be in front of the camera, so she thought her saving grace would be to pick it up and film us instead. There we have quite a lot of updated developments that have just happened. We landed in New York thinking we had a nice time with Mum and Dad before we set off, and then we landed and then realised that everything had changed, and they said that instead of leaving at 6 o'clock in the morning, we're leaving at 2 in the morning. So we rushed to the hotel. We're just laying everything out, trying to get everything ready. We're realising that Dad's actually got hardly any kit.
Some of our clothes don't fit.
Yeah. She'll do anything to stay behind the camera as opposed to in front of it.
Holly just rushed it from the airport.
Yeah.
So you didn't see what's important on that?
Yes.
So Dad, how long do you have to get ready?
We've got to be there in 20 minutes.
And how long has that meant that you've had?
What's that?
How long has it meant that you've had to get ready?
I've had 6, about just under 10 minutes so far.
I know, I feel stressed and I've had 2 hours. So we managed to get all that done and then head towards the dock.
Okay, everyone, let's hit the road. When we got to the boat, we were both quite tired, we just packed, there was lots of press there.
You're going to be the first one.
Well, the first woman to attempt this record. So fingers crossed we make it, and then I'll be the first woman to get the record, which will be awesome.
The crew contains some of the best sailors in the world.
Jumping on board, you sort of big guys going high, crushing your hand, and obviously steady man.
We had Ben Ainsley on the boat to the triple gold medalist.
Cool.
Then it got to actually saying goodbye to Mum, and that was quite emotional.
I think Joan felt like any mother would feel. She wasn't happy particularly about it, and she put on a brave face. You could say that we're being selfish doing something like this. At the same time, some of the great adventures in life just would never happen if adventurers didn't just get on and do these things.
My cousin Wendy came to say that Mum wasn't left on the dock on her own once we'd all waved goodbye. And she stayed with Mum for a couple of nights once we'd gone. She had someone looking out for her there.
We all just waved goodbye to everyone, motored out into the middle of the harbour, and then we had a briefing from Mike Sardenson.
Okay, general philosophy of the trip. We've got to get this thing across in one piece.
The crew are divided into 3 groups, or watches. Each watch takes a 3-hour shift.
When you're on, you're on, and I don't want people wandering around and having coffees, and when you're on, you're on. When you're on standby, you're kitted, and if we needed you instantly on deck, then you really should be in your jackets and harnesses downstairs. A jibe would probably be the only manoeuvre. Wake people up that are in their bunks.
The record is, as you all know, 6 days, 17 hours. The conditions we're leaving on is theoretically something like 5 days, 9, 10 hours. So we've got a little bit of leeway. On the other hand, we don't really know how this boat performs in the kind of breeze that we're going to be sailing in.
Well, we're just heading out to Ambrose Lighthouse, just trying to decide which sails to use.
The sails were then going up, and we went downstairs to find out about the harness equipment.
You have a harness every time you go out with a safety beacon and a clip, so once you're walking around on deck, you clip yourself in.
And this is the bit you clip onto the boat to make sure you didn't fall off. So you've got some flexibility to walk around, but you are always harnessed on.
Well, we're moving, we're going, we'll be going faster than you can water ski.
The next time that I had to put it on, I had to then get someone to actually take me through it. So the first time I wasn't really listening. I think I was more thinking, oh my god, we're setting sail now.
As you can see, there's buttons down here. These control the winches. Don't touch them because they're just wicked. They can lift the boat up.
The start line for the 3,000-mile crossing is the site of the old Ambrose Light Tower, 10 miles off New York.
Yeah, the Ambrose Light is a few boats away, and the pilot boat that's taking the boat out of New York Harbour, they'll then register the time, and that'll be the official timekeeper of the trip. Stay on! It's a go.
Pilot vessel, we'll go with your time.
Good luck.
What's the start time? 5:10:03.
And I suddenly feel like we're touring.
The weather forecast has the crew beating the record by over a day, but to achieve this time, they'll have to sail the boat at 98% of its optimum performance, day and night, for 6 days. By now, Holly and Sam have been up for over 24 hours. As they're not on watch, they're allowed to sleep. But this isn't the Hilton.
It sounded like we were going 40 miles an hour really fast yacht speed, but I mean, you get this sort of rushing the water past the hull. And the beds where you're sleeping right on the hull side. And when you're there, you've got this sort of rushing of water past your ear, banging of the front of the boat on the way. You've got the sails being whipped about on top, you've got the winches going, shouting.
Lots of clanging, clashing, creaking, and feels like the boat's going to break apart as it goes through waves.
You sleep with your head at the tail end of the boat, because if, as you're going up and down these waves, smash into a wave at the wrong angle, and all the boat shifts forwards and you break your neck if you're sleeping with your head to the bows.
The people on standby just sit on the floor or sit in a cubby hole just waiting to see whether they're going to be needed on deck. So there was just bodies everywhere lying on the floor and sleeping wherever they could find a space, really. Fortunately, as a family, we were quite good sleepers.
Light's just coming up. Heading in the right direction.
While the boat is still in range of the US coastline, a news crew take the opportunity to get some action footage. Soon after, the weather becomes too bad for helicopters to fly. Now, they're on their own.
Moving around the boat was really difficult.
The boat goes up, and then really fast pace. And when you're downstairs, you can't see where the boat is on a wave. You can sort of feel it. You don't know when the wave's going to come.
If I lie down, a lot easier.
There was quite a few face plants. At one point, my dad sort of popped out to say hello and a wave took the boat to the side and he just flung to the other side of the boat.
Oh, shit. You okay?
Instructions to get you to get photos instead of blog through.
It's that case of, someone pulling it, oh yeah, I'm fine, not wanting to admit that they just have been absolutely flung.
Okay.
As the boat moves out into the Atlantic, the seas get bigger.
I think my main worry for the trip was seasickness.
In cars and trains and planes and things, I'm normally okay, and Sam's the one that's making us open the window because he's feeling sick. But on the boat, that sort of flip round.
It's one of those things where it just comes on so suddenly. There you go.
With speeds of over 30 knots, potentially getting up to about 40 or 45 knots. So this is like to go on for the next 12 hours. So it's testing the boat to its fullest. And also testing the crew.
How are you feeling?
What's that?
How are you feeling?
I've had my moments.
Dad poked his head out of the back hatch, and I'll take a picture of Dad and this sunny.
I just managed to stick my head outside the boat and I was throwing up. Only see my daughter sort of filming me from above. And the seasickness came out bright red, and I think somebody said that even when he's throwing up, he's trying to promote the Virgin brand. Can't take the brand out of Branson.
Force 8 winds, trying to break sailing's hardest record, the transatlantic. They've only just started, but they're already finding it hard going.
I started to realise that water was dripping down inside all my clothes. So I stayed up there for about an hour, and then I went downstairs, and I really was soaked all the way through to my underwear.
I'm wet, all inside, everything. And so we're only about 12 hours into it, wicked.
So it was starting to get really cold, really disheartened, and I was starting to think, oh my god, I've got another 4 or 5 days of this to go.
The weather has gotten much trickier. GFS model goes low, and so that's going to slow us down no matter how we try to handle it.
The latest weather has added 12 hours to the fastest possible crossing time. The boat has to get round the weather system, adding precious miles to the journey. The fastest possible crossing is now 6 days and 3 hours, cutting the lead down to a slim 14 hours.
So what's your plan at the moment? Wait and see, because the weather's the weather, and it often changes.
When lying in bed, the thought of having to go up on deck is mentally quite exhausting. By the time you've got all your equipment on, you're actually feeling quite sick. So all you want to do is get on deck. But then you have to climb up some stairs and through a little cubbyhole. You've got to time it right so a wave doesn't go all over your head. Then once you're on the deck, you're so relieved that you're on top. But all the wet and rain and horrible weather doesn't feel so bad.
Sam's been given the important job of operating the electric winch which trims the mainsail.
Absolutely mental. It's cool to see these guys just working as a team at the top of their game as well. We're absolutely ripping on this. It's an amazing experience, exhilarating. I'd just say I'm absolutely loving it. By the way, it looks so far, we're going to definitely get ahead of the world record time, and all of us on board are going to feel very satisfied.
The freeze ride will made. It's best to mix with something solid, such as a big screwdriver.
Why is that?
The density of the concoction is rather solid.
This
the food looked like something that had been thrown up. I found it quite difficult to eat it.
We ran out of water, so now we're on to we've got Red Bull left and some caffeine drinks, some espresso caffeine drinks, so I'm very thirsty.
We haven't run out.
But we've got the tap water, we've run out of bottled water.
And the boat had a water maker which changes seawater into drinking water. It did taste pretty horrible as well, the water that the boat made.
It's just urine.
The weather's now testing the boat to its limits.
You could tell from most experienced sailors that they were worried about whether the boat could cope with the stress and strain that had been put on it. And because they were worried, I was worried. And this boat had never been in these kinds of conditions before.
How long did it take to have it built?
About a year and a half.
Right.
I was just noticing it now. The designer told me when he's building it, he's like, yeah, you'll be amazed because it's built to flex and to vibrate. Is that like doing that? Because if it doesn't flex, if it's built too stiff, it'll just crack apart.
With this much spray, the water's not just on deck. In these conditions, it's forcing its way through any small gap.
Quite often we find leaks and sometimes things will burst, and so it's good to have a look around the boat. There's always water somewhere, but we're probably close to a couple of ton up there, so we just gone up there and paint or knock it, and luckily we had a little rotary pump, so we pumped it out. But took a long time, but we've been up here for a couple of hours.
Well, we're doing our best. We just got into weather that is perhaps a little bit too strong for the boat.
Spray is causing other problems. Because of the high winds, the mainsail has to be dropped slightly and folded or reefed at the bottom. This reefed section keeps filling with hundreds of kilos of water. The water has to be pumped out every 30 minutes or it could have a catastrophic effect on the sail. Sam and Holly are on standby and are attending to their needs in different ways.
You have to see Bransons.
I'm forcing myself to eat this stodge, and Holly's watching me eat this food. And the smell and me eating alcohol just made her want to vomit. So there's me trying to eat this food that looks and tastes pretty much like vomit, and Holly being sick in the sink.
Didn't put him off at all, didn't see.
Have you been sick?
What's that? No, food's too good.
Are you a bit obsessive about work? Does it take something like this to clear it all away?
I don't think I'm obsessive about work. I'm obsessive about life, and I love what I do. Nice big wave over the boat. You've had gales of up to sort of 8 force winds. You've had seas of up to sort of 30, 40 feet high. We've had a boat going. It's not 40 knots. So so it's been a full-on 24 hours. The last thing one can consider is worrying about what's going on back home.
Less than 24 hours in and still on target for the record, but everyone is starting to feel the strain, particularly the helmsman.
The drivers are working really hard. We're pretty hard in the body.
Yeah.
But, 1.5 hours driving is a lot when it's really warm.
But a lot of the time people are just huddled. That hurts just the guy on the helm is getting smashed with a wave to his face.
So it's a little bit out of balance and the wheel gets pretty heavy. And we're chewing through helmsman's left hand here, and you pull the wheel over the top.
I saw Ben's hands, his hands were ripped to pieces, the calluses there, just sort of blood blistered in Ben's hands.
His wrist swelled up and was very painful, so we managed to find some quite hardcore painkillers to give him, and then I strapped up his wrist.
Is that your first patient?
It is.
The latest weather brings a big improvement in the crossing time. One day 5 hours ahead of the record, despite sailing slower than predicted, but the boat's suffering. On deck, the crew have discovered the first major damage.
When I was on shift, we realised that we'd ripped this out.
It's ripped it. Bad.
Well, I was sitting next to the navigator when we got word that the sail had ripped.
The mainsail ripped about 15 to 20 feet.
Initially, I hadn't realised the full implications of that, but I could tell from the navigator's face that it was serious.
Yeah, I mean, it looks hideous down here.
The water which has been collecting in the reefed section of the mainsail has finally proved too much. Although it was being pumped out every half hour, the weight and the battering it was taking from the wind has caused a huge rip.
At the moment, we're not sure whether it'll stop where it's split or whether it'll carry on splitting.
There's a big factor on whether we can get through the light spots in the forecast, so it's kind of a bit touch and go at the moment. Yeah.
If the strong winds continue, the crew can keep the torn section reefed and stay on the pace. But if the winds get lighter, they'll need to hoist the torn section of the sail, and then they'll be in trouble.
So at the moment, we've got some leeway, we're on breaking the record, we're only going very good for us, obviously. I'll ring you again tomorrow, Dad.
The sail problems have cost the crew dearly. The lead over the record has crashed back to 14 hours and is dropping quickly. But even with all the problems, they still managed to cover 453 miles in the first 24 hours. Just 6 years ago, this would have been enough to take the world 24-hour record.
Bloody hell. It's when the waves were really big and she's a little bit nervous. So many of these big waves are crashing onto the boat and we're all sitting there holding up together. I got a massive wave on my back, completely winded me, knocked me to the ground. All of our sort of life vests, which released automatically when we go in the water, exploded, thinking we had gone overboard. But then the safety life raft exploded off the back of the boat, and this all happened in the space of 5 minutes. I was like, fuck, this is pretty intense, this is meant to be happening.
The way these things work is there's a tablet inside them which dissolve when they're underwater and then inflate the life jacket. And because we were on deck and it was so wet with waves crashing over us, the tablet dissolved and they thought that we were underwater and they would just explode without any warning.
Got hit by water and then it only go off when you fall in the water, but pretty much everyone's now like this.
So once this happened, you'd have to deflate your own life vest like this and push all the air out of it. You then re-zip it up, but then once that happened, you don't have a chance to make that mechanism work again. So if you did fall in the water a second time, you'd have to blow it up yourself while you're in the middle of the ocean.
Quite hard in all these days to get the effort to blow it up.
The crew are constantly trimming and adjusting sails to get top performance from the boat. In this weather, one slip can be severely punished, as Ben Ainsley found out.
He was up there, great to have him up on the bow, just come back from China winning gold medals, and there he is, fully committed to his first transatlantic challenge, and he's up on the bow. We went to furl the jib toe. It's hard to slide, so basically he was on his way to being wrapped around into the J4, which is a roller furling sail. It could have been the middle of the night, we hadn't spotted him. It could have been quite dangerous. I put my hand on the foresight to try and stabilise it as I started turning the sails. Not good. Still there though, still attached. I said, oh, look, Ainsley's got all his medals tangled in the roller furler.
The ripped sail has set a bleak mood, but then comes a new weather forecast.
We were going too far south, and we were talking about whether to go back to Newport. Then the new weather came in. It looks, at the moment we're breaking the record by about a day and 6 hours, going the new direction. I'm afraid the weather's going to be more of the same for another 24 hours, but at least we could be back on Saturday, all going well.
But Saturday feels a long way off.
As spoke to Mum once during the trip. She had a bit of a panic in the middle of the night. Woke up really worried that something was going to happen to us, especially having all three of us in the boat together.
Her face said she was like, Connie, I was so worried about you guys. I was so happy that you're okay. Like, she sounded petrified.
It's great to be doing something like this. It's far tougher to be waiting on the sideline for your family to come home. I think when I went off on my adventures, somehow if something had happened to me, she would have managed all right. But if something had happened to her children, she wouldn't have managed at all well. So this was the first time I realised that going on an adventure with the children was far more stressful than just seeing her husband going off.
If we don't do it this time,
try again.
Yeah.
It's going to be really tough this time, but still working on it. Possible.
I think that quite a few of us on the boat are really hoping we'll do it this time. Yeah, we're coming back on again. Right now, it's quite tiring.
You right up there, Joe? Okay, up we come.
Another rip has opened up, high in the mainsail. There's no choice but to stop and examine the damage, despite the huge loss of time.
Doing this in 30, 35, 40-foot waves and enormous wave lines. It's like bringing a wounded animal on board and having to fix it. It's precious to us as a wounded animal. So we will carry on. I'm not sure. We'll find out in a minute.
Everyone's hopes are now in the hands of the sailmakers and the crew. If the mainsail can be fixed, there's still a chance of success.
Yeah, there's two places to swim. One where I just don't think they're going to be able to fix it, and then the higher one, which they couldn't get to, because they're going to try to bind up. We should still be able to sail despite having that bit. So it's the higher one they need to get fixed, but at least it's come down right without any race crew.
But while the sailmakers are fixing the damage to the sail, and the bowman's fixing the damage to the rigging, the Atlantic takes another piece of the boat.
Just lost one of the line grass, and a big wave came over from the back and took it.
The biggest concern was whether anybody had actually been pulled over with it, and immediately we went to check that everybody was on board the boat.
So the other ones aren't going to come off?
Yeah, we got them time yet.
There's 3 more. 3 or 4 more.
Okay. So we got enough, 24. 25 on board.
After goes down the ship.
The attempt now hangs in the balance. Coming up, the sailors will need all their ingenuity and skill to keep their hopes alive.
We had a full quiver, and we'd still be down here dooming and glooming.
On the move, but all is not well.
Now then, you know him as an adventurer and an entrepreneur. At the moment, Richard Branson is trying to enter the record books for sailing across the Atlantic. He joins us now live. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, nice to talk to you.
Gosh, so you're 2 days in, you've lost one of your lifeboats, your mainsail's been sorted, sounds like it's going well.
We may have pushed the boat too hard, but we'll see how we go in the next 2 or 3 hours and whether things can be mended or not.
But the sail hasn't been fixed. In these conditions, it doesn't matter, because the wind's too strong to have the whole sail up, so the torn section is folded. But the next forecast brings bad news. The weather has returned to the old pattern, and the lost time has caused the boat to miss a critical weather gate 3/4 of the way across.
And so we had a meeting of the captains and the navigators downstairs to decide whether we should continue on the journey.
We had a full quiver, we've still got, the weather's got to change. Oh, yeah.
My dad came down below and told a bunch of us that were down there there just wasn't any chance that we were going to break the records.
Yeah.
And then suddenly there was sort of like a moment where everyone realised together, you know, we're not heading to England anymore.
Richard also has a few other million people to tell.
So sadly we've decided to abandon it on this occasion and live to fight another day.
There's only one way someone can become so successful in business if they don't let defeat knock them down.
Thanks very much, John. Thanks for... Cheers. Right.
As the boat changes course for the 400-mile sail to Bermuda, with the wind behind, the Bransons start to enjoy themselves.
I'm now approaching 60, and I'm not going to be able to carry on being an adventurer forever. So it's great having Holly and Sam stepping into my shoes.
So could we one day see Holly and Sam at the helm of the entire Virgin Empire?
I've never seen Virgin as a sort of personal fiefdom for our family. I've seen it as a way of creating jobs, creating resources which we can use to tackle problems in the world. And I think if our kids see it like that, then we may well hand the companies over to them one day. But if I felt, which I don't think they would at all, that they wanted to put their hand in a honey pot and use it for their own personal luxuries, then I wouldn't have brought them up well, and I wouldn't work with them in that way. But I think they see it in the same way I see it.
But they may have to wait a few years yet.
Who's your favourite Walt Disney character you like to read?
I think I quite like Nemo, the fish Nemo, in Finding Nemo.
Yeah. I like to be Peter Pan. I like the idea of never growing up, being able to flap your arms and fly anywhere.
When we headed into Bermuda, we had people on the shoreline with mobile phones shouting, waving at us, and it was actually a really good feeling. We had this excitement.
They went up to the point as you sail in with their mobile phones and opened their mobile phones up, and so all you saw was all these lights waving in the distance, and you could hear them shouting, "Welcome to Bermuda." And when we got off the boat, Mom told us that it was her up there.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. I see.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
British billionaire Sir Richard Branson sailed into Bermuda grinning and waving last night, undefeated by a, inverted commas, hellish failed attempt to break a transatlantic speed record.
You'd be lying there thinking, this is absolutely awful. What was I thinking coming on this boat?
But 40-foot waves and gale force 9 winds put paid to the attempt, forcing the sailors to abandon the bid after just a day and a half at sea.
And I'd always get on the boat again. There's not something in me that would let me not.
I definitely would do it again.
If there was a point in the trip that I considered not doing it again, I doubt I'd admit it.
Well, there you go. Maybe we'll be back at it again, boys. I hope so. Unfinished business.